Incense praise. Incense in the censer now is burning. All the Dharma realm receives the fragrance. From afar the sea-vast host of Buddhas all inhale its sweetness. In every place auspicious clouds appear, our sincere intention thus fulfilling, as all Buddhas now show their perfect bodies. Namo incense cloud canopy Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Namo incense cloud canopy Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Namo incense cloud canopy Bodhisattva Mahasattva. Namo fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo fundamental teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Verse for opening a sutra. The unsurpassed, profound, and wonderful Dharma is difficult to encounter in hundreds of millions of eons. I now see and hear it, receive and uphold it, and I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning. The Diamond Sutra, the Vajra Chedika Prajna Paramita Sutra.
Thus have I heard. Once upon a time, the Buddha sojourned in the Jetavana Park near Sarvasati with an assembly of 1,250 bhikkhus. One day at mealtime, the world-honored one put on his robe, took his bowl, and entered the great town of Sarvasati to beg for his food. After he begged from door to door, he returned to his place. When he had taken his meal, he put away his robe and bowl, washed his feet, arranged his seat, and sat down. At the time, the elder Saputi, who was in the assembly, rose from his seat, uncovered his right shoulder, knelt upon his right knee, respectfully joined the palms of his hands, and said to the Buddha,
"It is very rare, O world-honored one, how well the Tathagata protects and thinks of all bodhisattvas, how well he instructs all the bodhisattvas. O world-honored one, when virtuous men or women develop the supreme enlightenment mind, how should their minds abide, and how should they be subdued?"
The Buddha said, "Excellent, excellent Subhuti. As you say, the Tathagata protects, cherishes, and instructs bodhisattvas so well. Now, listen attentively, and I will tell you how the minds of virtuous men and women who develop the supreme enlightenment mind should thus abide and be subdued." Subhuti replied,
"Oh yes, world-honored one, I shall be glad to hear your instruction."
The Buddha said, "Subhuti, all bodhisattvas and mahasattvas should subdue their minds as follows. All living beings born from eggs, wombs, humidity, or by transformation, with or without form, either thoughtful or thoughtless, and neither thoughtful nor thoughtless, are all led by me to the final nirvana for the extinction of reincarnation. Although immeasurable, uncountable, and unlimitable numbers of living beings are thus led to the final nirvana for the extinction of reincarnation, it is true that not a living being is led there. Why so, Subhuti? Because if a bodhisattva still clings to the false notion, laksana, of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life, he is not a true bodhisattva. Furthermore, Subhuti, a bodhisattva's mind should not abide anywhere when giving alms. That is to say, he should give without a mind abiding in form, or he should give without a mind abiding in sound, or in smell, or in taste, or in touch, or in things. Subhuti. Thus a bodhisattva should give alms without a mind abiding in false notions of form, laksana. Why? Because if a bodhisattva's mind does not abide in forms, laksanas, when practicing charity, dana, his merit will be inconceivable and immeasurable. Subhuti, what do you think? Can you think of and measure the extent of space in the East?
I cannot, world-honored one.
Subhuti, can you think of and measure all the extent of space in the south, west, and north, as well as the intermediate directions, including the zenith and nadir?
I cannot, world-honored one.
Subhuti, when a bodhisattva practices charity without a mind abiding in forms, his merit is equally inconceivable and immeasurable. Subhuti, a bodhisattva's mind should thus abide as taught. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Tathagata be seen by means of his bodily form?
No, world-honored one. The Tathagata cannot be seen by means of his bodily form. Why? Because when the Tathagata speaks of bodily form, it is not real form.
The Buddha said to Subhuti, everything with form is unreal. If all forms are seen as unreal, the Tathagata will be perceived. Subhuti said to the Buddha,
World-honored one, will there be living beings who can develop a true belief in these words, sentences, and chapters when they are expounded to them?
The Buddha said, Subhuti, do not speak like that. In the last 500 years, before the final passing of the Tathagata, there will be those who will observe the rules of morality and perform good actions which will result in blessing. These people will be able to develop a faith in these sentences, which they will consider as embodying the truth. You should know that they will not have planted good roots in just 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 Buddha lands. They will have planted them in countless thousands and tens of thousands of Buddha lands. Upon hearing these sentences, there will arise in them a single thought of pure faith. Subhuti, the Tathagata knows and sees all. These living beings will thus acquire immeasurable merits. Why? Because they will have wiped out false notions of an ego, a personality, a being and a life, of Dharma and not Dharma. Why? Because if their minds grasp form, laksana, they will still cling to the notion of an ego, a personality, a being and a life. If their minds grasp the Dharma, they will still cling to the notion of an ego, a personality, a being and a life. Why? Because if their minds grasp the not Dharma, they will still cling to the notion of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life. Therefore, one should not grasp and hold on to the notion of Dharma as well as that of not Dharma. This is why the Tathagata always said, Ye bhiksus should know that the Dharma I expound is likened to a raft. Even the Dharma should be cast aside. How much more so the not Dharma? Subhuti, what do you think? Has the Tathagata in fact obtained supreme enlightenment, anubodhi? Does the Tathagata in fact expound the Dharma? Subhuti replied,
As I understand the meaning of the Buddha's teaching, there is no fixed Dharma called Supreme Enlightenment, and there is also no fixed Dharma the Tathagata can expound. Why? Because the Dharma the Tathagata expounds cannot be clung to and cannot be expressed in words. It is neither Dharma nor not Dharma. Why is this? All Bhadras and Aryas differ on account of the eternal asamskarta Dharma.
Subhuti, what do you think? If someone filled the universe with the 7 treasures and gave them all as alms, would his merit be great? Subhuti replied,
Very great, world-honored one. Why? Because this merit is not the nature of merit. The Tathagata says it is great.
Subhuti, if on the other hand, someone received and kept even a 4-line stanza of this sutra and expounded it to others, his merit would surpass that of the giver of treasures. Why? Because, Subhuti, all Buddhas and their supreme enlightenment Dharma originate from this sutra. Subhuti, the so-called Buddhas and Dharmas are not real Buddhas and Dharmas. Subhuti, what do you think? Can one who has entered the stream, Srota Apana, have this thought in his mind? I have obtained the fruit of entering the stream. Subhuti replied,
No, world-honored one. Why? Because Srota Apana means entering the stream. But actually, there is no entry into either form, sound, smell, taste, touch, or Dhamma. Therefore, he is called Srota Apana.
Subhuti, what do you think? Can a Sakdagaman have this thought in his mind? I have obtained the fruit of a Sakdagaman. Subhuti replied,
No, world-honored one. Why? Because Sakdagaman means once more to come, but actually there is neither coming nor going. Therefore, he is called a Sakdagami.
Subhuti, what do you think? Can an Anagaman have this thought in his mind? I have obtained the fruit of an Anagaman. Subhuti replied,
No, world-honored one. Why? Because Anagaman means no coming, but actually there is no such a thing as no coming. Therefore, he is called an Anagaman.
Subhuti, what do you think? Can an Arhat have this thought in his mind? I have obtained the enlightenment of an Arhat. Subhuti replied,
No, world-honored one. Why? Because there is no Dharma which is called Arhatship. World-honored one, if an Arhat thinks, I have obtained the enlightenment of an Arhat, he will still grasp and hold on to the notion of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life. World-honored one, the Buddha has declared that I have obtained the passionless Samadhi, and that I surpass all men. I am, therefore, the highest passionless Arhat. World-honored one, I do not think I am a passionless Arhat, for, world-honored one, if I had thought I have attained Arhatship, the world-honored one would not have said, Subhuti takes delight in the calm and quiet, free from temptation and distress. The fact that Subhuti does not act mentally is called the calm and quiet in which Subhuti takes delight.
The Buddha said to Subhuti, What do you think? Did the Tathagata obtain anything from the Dharma when in the past he was with Dipamkara Buddha?
No, world-honored one. When the Tathagata was with Dipamkara, he did not obtain anything from the Dharma.
Subhuti, what do you think? Do bodhisattvas adorn Buddha lands by their moral actions?
No, world-honored one. Why? Because this is not real adornment. It is merely called the adornment of Buddha lands.
Subhuti, This is why all bodhisattvas and mahasattvas should thus develop a pure and clean mind, which should not abide in form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and dharma. They should develop a mind which does not abide in anything. Subhuti, supposing a man has a body as great as Mount Sumeru, what do you think? Would such a body be great? Subhuti replied,
Very great, World Honored One. Why? Because the Buddha says it is not the real body but is merely called a great body.
Subhuti, if there were as many rivers like the Ganges as there are grains of sand in the Ganges, would the total of grains of sand in all these rivers be very great? Subhuti replied,
Very great, World Honored One. These rivers would be innumerable. How much more so would be their sand grains?
Subhuti, I now tell you truly, if a virtuous man or woman filled a number of universes, as great as the number of sand grains in all these rivers, with the 7 treasures, and gave them all away in alms, dana, would his or her merit be great? Subhuti replied,
Very great, World Honored One.
The Buddha said to Subhuti, if a virtuous man or woman receives and holds, in mind, even a 4-line stanza of this sutra, and expounds it to others, his or her merit will surpass that of the almsgiver. Furthermore, Subhuti, wheresoever this sutra, or even one of its 4-line stanzas, is expounded, you should know that all devas, men and asheras, should make their offerings there as if the place was a Buddha stupa or a Buddha temple. How much more so if someone is able to receive, hold in mind, read and recite the whole sutra? Subhuti, you should know that such a person will achieve the highest and rarest dharma. Wheresoever this sutra may be found, the Buddha and his respected disciples will be there also. Subhuti then asked the Buddha,
World Honored One, what name should be given to this sutra, and how should we receive it and hold it in mind?
The Buddha said, this sutra should be called the Diamond Prajnaparamita, under which name you should receive and hold it. Why? Because, Subhuti, the Prajnaparamita as expounded by the Buddha is not Prajnaparamita, but is merely so called. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata expound the Dharma? Subhuti said,
World Honored One, the Tathagata does not expound anything.
Subhuti, what do you think? Are there many particles of dust in the universe? Subhuti replied,
Many, World Honored One.
Subhuti, the Tathagata says these particles of dust are not real, but are merely called particles of dust. The Tathagata says the universe is not real, but it is merely called the universe. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Tathagata be perceived by means of his 32 physical characteristics, yaksanas?
No, World Honored One. The Tathagata cannot be perceived by them. Why? Because the Tathagata says they are not real, but are merely called the 32 physical characteristics.
Subhuti, if on the one hand, a virtuous man or woman, in giving alms, dana, sacrifices as many lives as there are sand grains in the Ganges, and on the other hand, someone receives and holds in mind even a 4-line stanza of this sutra and expounds it to others, merit resulting from the latter will be greater. At that time, after listening to this sutra, Subhuti had understood its profound meaning and was moved to tears. He said to the Buddha,
"How rare, O world-honored one! The Buddha has expounded such a very profound sutra. Since I have acquired the wisdom eye, I have not heard of such a sutra. World-honored one, if someone, after listening to this sutra, believes that his mind is clean and pure, he will realize reality. We should know that such a person will achieve the highest and rarest merit. World-honored one, this reality is not reality, but the Tathagata calls it reality. World-honored one, as I now listen to this sutra, I have no difficulty in believing, understanding, receiving, and holding it. But in the last epoch, the last 500-year period, if there be a man who happens to listen to this sutra, believes, understands, receives, and holds it, he will be most rare. Why? Because he will no longer think in terms of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life. Why? Because the forms of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life are not forms. Why? Because when he has rejected all forms, he is called a Buddha."
The Buddha said, "Just so, Subhuti, just so. If on the one hand, there be a man who listens to the sutra and is not filled with alarm, fear, or dread, you should know that such a person is most rare. Why? Because, Subhuti, as the Tathagata says, the first perfection, paramita, is not so, but is merely called the first perfection, paramita." Subhuti, the Tathagata speaks of the perfection of patience, santi paramita, which is not but is called the perfection of patience. Why? Because, Subhuti, in a past life, when my body was mutilated by Kali Raja, I had at that time no notion of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life. Why? Because in the past, when my body was dismembered, if I still held the conception of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life, I would have been stirred by feelings of anger and hatred. Subhuti, I also remember that in the past, during my former 500 lives, I was a Kshatriyasi and held no conception of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life. Therefore, Subhuti, bodhisattvas should forsake all conceptions of form and resolve to develop the supreme enlightenment mind, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Their minds should not abide in form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and dharma. Their minds should abide nowhere. If minds abide somewhere, it will be in falsehood. This is why the Buddha says that bodhisattvas' minds should not abide in form when practicing charity, dana. Subhuti, all bodhisattvas should thus make offerings for the welfare of all living beings. The Tathagata speaks of forms which are not forms, and of living beings who are not living beings. Subhuti, the Tathagata's words are true and correspond to reality. They are ultimate words, neither deceitful nor heterodox. Subhuti, the Dharma the Tathagata has obtained is neither real nor unreal. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva practices charity, dana, with a mind abiding in things, dharma, he is like a man entering the darkness where he cannot see anything. But if a bodhisattva practices dana with a mind not abiding in dharma, he is like a man with open eyes who can see everything in the sunshine. Subhuti, in future ages, if a virtuous man or woman is able to receive, hold in mind, read and recite this sutra, the Tathagata, by means of his Buddha wisdom, will know and see clearly that such a person will achieve immeasurable and unlimitable merits. Subhuti, if on the one hand, a virtuous man or woman sacrifices in the practice of charity, dana, as many lives as the sand grains of the Ganges in the morning, at midday, and again in the evening, and continues so doing throughout numberless eons. And if, on the other hand, a person after listening to this sutra believes in his own mind without further contradiction, the latter's merit will surpass that of the former. How much more so if this sutra is written, received, held, read, recited, and expounded to others. Subhuti. To sum up, the merits resulting from this sutra are inconceivable, inestimable, and without limit. The Tathagata expounds it to those initiated into the Mahayana and the Supreme Jnana. If they are able to receive, hold in mind, read and recite it and expound it widely to others, the Tathagata will know and will see that they will achieve inexpressible and inconceivable merits that are without measure or limit. They will bear responsibility for the Tathagata's supreme enlightenment, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Why? Because, Subhuti, those who take delight in the Hinayana and hold view of an ego, a personality, a being and a life, cannot listen to, receive, hold in mind, read and recite this sutra and explain it to others. Subhuti, wheresoever this sutra may be found, all worlds of devas, men, and ashuras should make offerings. For you should know that such a place is just a stupa which should be revered, worshipped, and circumambulated with offerings of flowers and incense. Furthermore, Subhuti, if a virtuous man or woman receives, holds in mind, reads and recites this sutra, and is despised by others, this person who is bound to suffer from evil destinies in retribution for his past sins, and whose karmic sins are now eradicated by the other's contempt, will attain supreme enlightenment, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Subhuti, I remember that in the past countless eons, before the advent of Dipankara Buddha, I met 84,000 milliards of Buddhas, to whom I made offerings and whom I served faultlessly. Now, if in the last period of 500 years, in the Buddha Kalpa, someone is able to receive, hold in mind, read and recite this sutra, his merits will far exceed mine which resulted from my offerings made to Buddhas. For mine cannot be reckoned as 100th, 1,000th, 1/10,000th, or 100,000th part thereof. In fact, no computation or comparison is possible. Subhuti, in the last period of the Buddha Kalpa, if a virtuous man or woman is able to receive, hold in mind, read and recite this sutra, my full statement of this person's merits will create derangement, doubt, and disbelief in the minds of all listeners. Subhuti, you should know that as the meaning of this sutra is inconceivable, so is the fruit of its reward. At the time, Subhuti asked the Buddha,
World Honored One, if a virtuous man or woman is determined to develop the Supreme Enlightenment mind, how should his or her mind abide, and how should it be subdued?
The Buddha said to Subhuti, a virtuous man or woman who is determined to develop the supreme enlightened mind should thus develop it. I have to lead all living beings to put a stop to reincarnation and escape suffering. And when they have been so led, not one of them in fact stops reincarnating or escapes suffering. Why? Because, Subhuti, if a bodhisattva clings to the notion of an ego, a personality, a being and a life, he is not a true bodhisattva. Why? Because, Subhuti, there is not really a dharma which can develop the supreme enlightenment mind. Subhuti, what do you think? When the Tathagata was with Dipankara Buddha, did he have any dharma by means of which he attained supreme enlightenment? Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi.
No, world-honored one. As I understand the meaning of the Buddha's teaching, when he was with Dipankara Buddha, he had no dharma by means of which he attained supreme enlightenment.
The Buddha said, just so, Subhuti, just so. There was really no dharma by means of which the Tathagata obtained supreme enlightenment. Subhuti, if there had been, Dipankara Buddha would not have predicted, in your next life, you will be a Buddha named Shakyamuni. Why is this? Because Tathagata means the suchness of all dharmas. If someone still says that Tathagata obtained supreme enlightenment, I tell you, Subhuti, there is no dharma by means of which the Buddha did so. Because, Subhuti, that enlightenment was by itself neither real nor unreal. That is why the Tathagata says that all dharmas are Buddha's dharmas. Subhuti, these so-called dharmas are not, but are expediently called all dharmas. Subhuti, supposing there is a man whose body is great. Subhuti said,
World-honored one, the great body of which the Tathagata speaks is not great, but is expediently called a great body.
Subhuti, in like manner, if a bodhisattva says, I should lead uncountable living beings to put a stop to reincarnation and escape from suffering, he cannot be called a bodhisattva. Why? Because there is really no dharma called the bodhisattva stage. Therefore, the Buddha says, of all dharmas, there is not a single one which possesses an ego, a personality, a being and a life. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva says, I should adorn Buddha lands, he cannot be called a bodhisattva. Why? Because when the Tathagata speaks of such adornment, it is not, but is expediently called adornment. Subhuti, if a bodhisattva is thoroughly versed in the doctrine of the unreality of ego and of things, dharma, the Tathagata will call him a true bodhisattva. Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata possess human eyes?
Yes, world-honored one, the Tathagata possesses human eyes.
Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata possess Deva eyes?
Yes, world-honored one, the Tathagata possesses Deva eyes.
Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata possess wisdom eyes?
Yes, world-honored one, the Tathagata possesses wisdom eyes.
Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata possess Dharma eyes?
Yes, world-honored one, the Tathagata possesses Dharma eyes.
Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata possess Buddha eyes?
Yes, world-honored one, the Tathagata possesses Buddha eyes.
Subhuti, what do you think? Does the Tathagata say that the sand grains in the Ganges are sand grains?
Yes, world-honored one. The Tathagata says they are sand grains.
Subhuti, what do you think? If there were as many Ganges rivers as sand grains in the Ganges, and if there were as many Buddha realms as sand grains in all these Ganges rivers, would there be many world systems?
Many, world-honored one.
The Buddha said, the living beings in all these world systems have many different minds which are all known to the Tathagata. Why? Because the minds the Tathagata speaks of are not minds, but are expediently called minds. And why? Because, Subhuti, neither the past, the present, nor the future mind can be found. Subhuti, what do you think? If someone filled the universe with the 7 treasures and gave all away in his practice of dana, would this good cause enable the giver to gain a great merit?
Yes, world-honored one. Because of this good cause, the giver would gain a great merit.
Subhuti, if the merit was real, the Tathagata would not say it was great. He says so because there is no merit. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Buddha be perceived by his completely perfect physical body, Rupakaya?
No, world-honored one. The Tathagata should not be so perceived. Why? Because the Buddha says the completely perfect Rupakaya is not what is called the completely perfect Rupakaya.
Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Tathagata be perceived by his completely perfect forms?
No, world-honored one. The Tathagata should not be so perceived, because the Tathagata says the completely perfect forms are not what are called completely perfect forms.
Subhuti, do not say that the Tathagata thinks, I must expound the Dharma. Do not have such a thought. Why? Because if someone says so, he will really slander the Buddha and be unable to understand my teaching. Subhuti, when the Tathagata expounds the Dharma, there is really no Dharma to teach. But this is expediently called teaching the Dharma. Then the wise Subhuti said to the Buddha,
World-honored one, will there be in future ages living beings who will believe this Dharma when they hear it?
The Buddha said, Subhuti, the living beings you just mentioned are neither living nor not living beings. Why? Because, Subhuti, the Tathagata says these living beings are not really, but they are expediently called living beings. Subhuti said to the Buddha,
World-honored one, does your own attainment of supreme enlightenment, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, mean that you have not gained anything whatsoever?
The Buddha replied, Just so, Subhuti, just so. I have not gained even the least Dharma from supreme enlightenment. And this is called supreme enlightenment. Furthermore, Subhuti, this Dharma is universal and impartial, wherefore it is called supreme enlightenment. The practice of all good virtues, dharmas, free from attachment to an ego, a personality, a being, and a life, will result in the attainment of supreme enlightenment. Subhuti, the so-called good virtues, dharmas, the Tathagata says are not good, but are expediently called good virtues. Subhuti, if on the one hand, a man, in his practice of charity, dana, gives away the 7 treasures piled up in a heap, as great as all the Mounts Sumeru in the universe put together, and on the other hand, another man receives holds in mind, reads and recites even a 4-line stanza of this Prajna Paramita Sutra and expounds it to others, the merit resulting from the former's dana will not be worth 100th, 1,000th, 1/10,000th, and 100,000th part of that obtained by the latter, as no conceivable comparison can be made between the two. Subhuti, what do you think? You should not say that Tathagata has this thought in his mind: I should liberate living beings. Subhuti, you should not think so. Why? Because there are really no living beings whom the Tathagata can liberate. If there were, the Tathagata would hold the concept of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life. Subhuti, when the Tathagata speaks of an ego, there is in reality no ego, although common men think so. Subhuti, the Tathagata says common men are not, but are expediently called common men. Subhuti, what do you think? Can the Tathagata be recognized by his 32 physical characteristics? Subhuti replied,
Yes, yes he can.
The Buddha said, Subhuti, if the Tathagata can be recognized by his 32 physical characteristics, a world ruler, Chakravarti, would be the Tathagata. Subhuti said to the Buddha,
World-honored one, as I understand your teaching, the Tathagata cannot be recognized by his 32 physical characteristics.
Thereupon, the world-honored one recited the following gatha: He who sees me by outward appearance and seeks me in sound treads the heterodox path and cannot perceive the Tathagata. Subhuti, if you have in your mind this thought that the Tathagata does not rely on his possession of characteristics to obtain supreme enlightenment, Subhuti, banish that thought. Subhuti, if you think it while developing the perfect enlightenment mind, you will advocate the annihilation of all dharmas. Do not have such a thought. Why? Because one who develops the supreme enlightenment mind does not advocate the annihilation of things. Subhuti, if, on the one hand, a bodhisattva gives in his practice of dana all the 7 treasures, in quantities sufficient to fill worlds as many as sand grains in the Ganges, and, on the other hand, another man comprehended that all dharmas were egoless, and thereby achieved perfection of patience, ksanti, the latter's merit would surpass that of the former. Why? Because, Subhuti, all bodhisattvas do not receive reward for their merits. Subhuti asked the Buddha,
World-honored one, why do bodhisattvas not receive reward for their merits?
Subhuti, bodhisattvas should have no longing and no attachment when they practice meritorious virtues. Therefore, they do not receive a reward. Subhuti, if someone says that the Tathagata comes or goes, sits or lies, he does not understand what I mean. Why? Because the Tathagata has neither whence to come or whither to go. Therefore he is called the Tathagata. Subhuti, what do you think? If a virtuous man or woman reduced to dust all the worlds in the universe, would those particles of dust be many? Subhuti replied,
Many, world-honored one. Why? Because if they really existed, the Buddha would not say they were particles of dust. And why? Because when the Buddha speaks of particles of dust, they are not, but are expediently called particles of dust. World-honored one, when the Tathagata speaks of worlds, they are not, but are expediently called worlds. Why? Because if they really exist, they are just agglomerations. The Tathagata speaks of agglomerations which are not, but are expediently called agglomerations.
Subhuti, that which is called an agglomeration cannot be spoken of, but the vulgar man has longing for and attachment to this thing. Subhuti, what do you think? If someone says, the Buddha speaks of the view of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life. Subhuti, does that person understand what I mean?
No, world-honored one, that person does not understand. Why? Because when the Tathagata speaks of the view of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life, it is not really, but is expediently called the view of an ego, a personality, a being, and a life.
Subhuti, he who develops the supreme enlightenment mind should thus know, see, believe, and comprehend all things. He should not set up the perception of things, dharma laksana, in his mind. Subhuti, the so-called form of things, dharma laksana, the Tathagata says is not, but is expediently called the form of things. Subhuti, if on the one hand someone gave away in alms, dana, the 7 treasures in quantity sufficient to fill all the worlds in uncountable eons, and if on the other hand a virtuous man or woman developed the Bodhi mind, and received, held in mind, read and recited even a 4-line stanza of this sutra, and expounded it to others, the latter's merit would surpass that of the former. In what manner should it be taught to others? By teaching it without attachment to form, with the immutability of the Absolute. Why is it? Because all phenomena are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble and a shadow, like dew and lightning. Thus should you meditate upon them. When the Buddha had finished expounding this sutra, the elder Subhuti, together with the bhikshus, bhiksunis, upasakas, upasikas, and all the worlds of devas, men, and asuras who have listened to his teaching, were filled with joy and believed, received, and observed it.
Verse of transference. May the merit and virtue accrued from this work adorn the Buddha's pure lands, repaying 4 kinds of kindness above, and aiding those suffering in the paths below. May those who see and hear of this all bring forth the resolve for body, and when this retribution body is over, be born together in the land of ultimate bliss. Amitabha Buddha, Amitabha Buddha, Amitabha Buddha.